Check. 1, 2, check. 1, 2. Let's go over to the chat really quick and make sure everything is copacetic. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us at this semi-early hour. I don't know, during COVID times, anything really flies, but I'm here with Steve Kelsiewicz, an author in his own right, and we're going to talk a little bit about his work. He literally wrote the book on why you better call Saul, and the digital dystopias, which is one of my favorites. One of my favorite books on storytelling and fandom in modern day, and I can't recommend enough. We'll go over that in a minute. Steve, introduce yourself, and we'll be talking about Peter Gould here today. No, absolutely. Thank you for agreeing to come on. And we had you on once before. And after reading, I have this on screen right now, the Why You Better Call Saul. I got back into Better Call Saul. Not that I ever wasn't liking it, but as a YouTuber and a content creator, it's quite stressful to watch so many shows, as the joke goes. But there is a little bit of truth to that. You immerse yourself and you feel like you don't want to get too deep in this, especially something of substance, and abstract as that sounds, because you want to then talk about it and make videos so if you have other things planned. It's almost better to watch junk when you're trying to fall asleep. And I call them lullaby series. But yeah, no, we'll go over your books, because, The World According to the Simpsons and all this, the Tal Jack Bauer, the first procedural pretty much that was after 9/11. Not pretty much, I think actually was the first one. So yeah, a lot of important stuff right there. But also you've had a personal contact with some of these people that we're going to be talking about, and you have, regardless of that, you have a lot of experience with Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, and so forth. Peter Gould is a fine arts graduate. He went on to write Double Dragon for his first screenplay, in which we were just talking about shortly. God, would I kill for a Double Dragon, because that I would think that would be just as hard to do as it would be shameful later on once you're as prestigious as Peter Gould. But at the same time, you got to break through somewhere. And he got paid to write a movie and paid to write. And now look at what he's done. But what we've done throughout this series is we've highlighted a few different... Hold on. We want to make sure that sound is going through on both ends right there. Steve, see, right there. This is the final one. I swear to God, I knew it was going to happen. Steve, we're going to do a reintroduction. I turned you off. Steve Kelsiewicz, everybody, a lawyer, trademark lawyer, author, and everything else. Just go ahead and give your spiel one more time. I truly apologize. Last time I muted myself. This time I muted you. We can hear each other, but there's different.
No problem. I'm Stephen Kelsiewicz. Thanks for having me on again. Practicing intellectual property attorney. And I've written 5 books. Digital Dystopias of Black Mirror and Electric Dreams is the newest, and Why You Better Call Saul, The World According to the Simpsons, The Tal of Jack Bauer, and From Poland to Brooklyn. So most of those have focused on pop culture, and the last one, of course, on the Holocaust. And I think it's a great series you've put together. Looking forward to discussing Peter Gould, his influence on Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and he's the individual who created the character of Saul Goodman. So lots to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And so sorry for that. And thank you guys in the chat, fandom family. That's what it's all about. So I apologize. Let's move on, though, from my inept way. So we have Peter Gould, who I said did Double Dragon, but let's just move past that. Everybody's got to break through somewhere. And trust me, there's a lot worse ways to break through than Double Dragon, a major feature film, at some point. But he created the character of Saul Goodman. So we've talked a lot about in this series of writers, authors, and directors. But he's often credited as a co-showrunner, a showrunner, a creator, or an executive story editor. You've been inside some writing rooms. How would you best... Is there really even a clear way to say what people do within these writers' rooms? Because it has been voiced even by himself that they have odd titles for things, and everybody kind of contributes. But you said he created Saul Goodman, so I mean that must be some finite proof that he is the one that came to it. Because they don't speak like that unless they do, because there's a respect thing. And I'm sure as a lawyer, there's also a legal thing that you probably couldn't voice that if it wasn't true.
Yeah. I think that's right. No, and I think a lot of the roles are multifaceted, so they're given titles because people sort of have to have a title. You're right. I mean, he is credited as creating Saul Goodman, so he must have done that. But did he do that alone? I don't know for sure.
No.
I mean, he certainly has been the only one who's said that, and that's been said about him. But I think that he's said in a number of interviews, and also just when I've spoken to him, the writers' room at Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is very collaborative, from what I understand. One or two writers is usually credited with writing the episode. One is directing it. I think on the directing side, it is probably that individual who's credited.
Yeah.
On the writing side, different writing rooms handle this differently. So I'll just give an example in The Simpsons. So I've been in the Simpsons writers room a number of times, and the individual who's credited as writing that individual show and that script, from what I've heard, most of the time, upwards of 75% of, or not more, of the original draft of the script is completely scrapped. And the other interesting sort of fact there is, it's sort of torn up in the writer's room. And I think The Simpsons has always said that they will delete a joke if it doesn't get a left around the room twice.
Mm-hmm.
The best scripts are the ones that are actually marked up the most. I've actually been at Fox on a stressful day where the writers, Matt Groening was in front of the writers telling them to correct things, and I was supposed to have lunch with one of my friends there, and he had to quickly sort of go back to the writers' room, and he had to actually cancel his flight. He was supposed to be flying back to New York, and he told me afterward that this is fine, right? This is going to be a stressful day, but that's going to be the best particular show of the season, because they worked so hard on it, they revised it. I'd imagine that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is probably similar. It's known to be a collaborative environment. Ideas are explored openly, and they've all talked about this in my conversations with them. I think collegial environment, and ideas are intended to be expressed freely. So that's been my understanding and everything I've heard.
Yeah, and I mean, you actually have been there, so that's awesome.
I haven't been in the
you're whatever. You've been there more than I have. If you're having lunch with one of the writers and they can't go for lunch, then you've been there.
The Simpsons ones I've been to a bunch of times. Yeah, the Breaking Bad.
The Simpsons. I mean, no, we've all been to the Simpsons writing room. I mean, don't worry about that. No, but I think that the scrutiny, what you're speaking to of, and I've watched a few documentaries. That's as close as I get. And it does seem like the more it's scrutinized, the better it'll be, right? Because if you let it go in one pass, then nobody's second guessing anything. So, like, the same way in which you should feel free to fail here, as I just failed in this.
No,
because I failed. You should feel free to fail, but at the same time, it's like people should feel free to call out that failure, else it's gonna be junk. Like, they need to double guess.
I think. And there are certain shows, and I keep bringing up The Simpsons. The Simpsons, Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul are three shows that are so detail-oriented. I mean, if there was one, and I've heard Peter talk about this, I mean, that really the focus of the show is getting all of these tiny details right. I mean, nobody can catch them on a first or second viewing. The writers themselves, I'm assuming, on a first draft, don't catch all these details. So the way that they're able to sort of look back and do these flashbacks and flash forwards and put in these intricate details, Chuck will sort of, open a shoebox, right? And there'll be something in the shoebox that's a look back from, Breaking Bad season 3, episode 8, or something like that. That requires a tremendous amount of attention. And I think in terms of the script writing process, I'd imagine that that's part of the reason it goes through a thorough process to catch all that.
Absolutely. And what I've, through the interviews in which I watch, and everybody from Top Shelf Fandom that subscribed will know that I tend to do a lot of interview research and listen. I find that's a good way, obviously, is my only way until I get invited to these lunches to go about it. But I see that there is a concern for the continuity, say with Better Call Saul, because this is Peter Gould. Okay, so Vince Gilligan was the creator Breaking Bad, everybody. Peter Gould came in. Now he's got a Writer Guild Academy award, either won or nominated for the first episode of Breaking or Better Call Saul, and then he at least one win during Breaking Bad. So he came in, and he was a part of the process. Like we said, who knows how much he was like creating, but he was definitely he's there. Like he's one of the main players, else he wouldn't, because Vince stepped aside for quite a bit of time to do El Camino, right? To do
right.
that.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I mean, that, in terms of Better Call Saul, Peter Gould is listed as co-showrunner with Vince Gilligan, but Peter has really taken hold of that show. Vince has stepped away a bit, worked on other projects, and they're both there. I mean, I don't know in the day-to-day, who's approving what, but examples that they've given, and part of the reason that the show takes so long to produce and from writing it to actually showing it on screen is that Peter and Vince have like requested that every detail be approved, like literally like the pencils on the table, the way that the not only how they look, the way that the direction that they're facing, the number of pencils, like things like that.
Oh, see, now that sounds a little bit insane, but no.
Yeah, I mean, that I think that's that goes to the attention to detail, and look, I think you can argue the merits of that. I think that it adds to the show to a certain extent. It also delays the show in other ways, but there's, I think, a certain segment of the viewing audience that appreciates that type of detail and level of minutia, and I think people take different things from this show. You're more focused on the story or the art of the show. I know, for example, Ray Seorn, she's an actress who's so focused. You hear her in interviews, and when I've spoken to her, on the craft of acting. She's
she said to read the scripts more than even Bob Saul.
Yeah, I mean, and their backgrounds are obviously different, right? Bob Odenkirk is a
improv
writer,
comedian and writer, yeah.
And it's interesting, of course, how he's shifted into become arguably one of the best, certainly one of the best well-known, maybe one of the best drama actors today, and to come from a television writing background, sketch comedy, it's a pretty interesting shift. But then someone like Ray Seorn, who's, sort of a career actress, also great in her own right, but focused on the craft. So it's an interesting mix of actors, actresses also.
But I agree with what you said, because even though, I mean, there's this old adage of count how many pencils you have in your desk, right? And then tell me how many you have, and then keep track of that. Because if we can't keep track of how many pencils we're using, then we can't keep this company afloat. So there is value in that. I joke and I say it sounds a little crazy, but at the same time, when you get all buddy in my low-level writing rooms that I've been in, also it can come a little bit of a frat house. It can come a little bit unprofessional and a little bit goofy. So there is there's a lot of value in setting a precedent. So yeah, does it probably matter where those pencils are pointed? Probably not, but it's a structure. It is, and I think so many decisions are deliberate. I mean, look, when I was writing Why You Better Call Saul, obviously rewatching the series, trying to pick up on things and all of that, one of the challenges is trying to figure out why the show made a particular decision, right, at a moment. Like there may be a focus on something that doesn't seem relevant at the time. And it may not seem relevant for a couple of seasons even, right? So some of that isn't even evident early on, and you see it, in the future. Sometimes the writers, and I think, Peter has actually spoken to this a lot, they'll write themselves into corners. So they'll make these deliberate decisions. The gun in Breaking Bad. I'm so happy you're bringing this up. I don't want to, but this is one of those, that big gun, right? Is this what, like, that was amazing. I'm sorry.
I was thinking about one of the big issues that I think they've started to address, but that's a good example. It was when Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad mentioned that he had been married 3 times.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yep.
And they've addressed that to an extent, right? Spoiler, right? He's gotten married to Kim, and I don't think they fully addressed his whole history, but
they brushed it to the side, but it was brought up, and because I've seen that episode and I've seen after it, and that's kind of their way of respecting us as a fandom, but also going their own way.
And that may be one of the lessons, in terms of their tremendous focus on detail, but then alternatively creating this throwaway line that ultimately caused them issues,
Yeah.
right? So maybe that was a mistake. I know they've said that, they've had certain regrets about certain lines and I think that was one of them that they've acknowledged was kind of problematic for them. When you, as deliberate as they are most of the time, I think what you see is that when they aren't deliberate and they're sort of making this throwaway line, it can run into some problems. So I think, that's an argument for, hey, let's pay greater attention to detail, because then we'll have less of this stuff that we're just throwing away and we won't have problems in the future.
When we do the
So,
Mike show after.
yeah.
Which I don't know if that'll happen. But so what I find so interesting about this, because what we're talking about, guys, is Breaking Bad. You pretty much have built this beautiful cathedral, right? You have built this, just everything about it is this is prestige TV. This, in my opinion, these are my words. Steve is a lawyer. He'll sue me. And these are not his. It makes The Sopranos look like a bitch. I'm sorry. But it does. It is so good. Like, it is so good. Yeah. We all love it. It has way more. I love this. And it let it be known, I love The Sopranos. But, like, Breaking Bad is so good. So to say, let me take a minor character in which Bob Odenkirk said, you're going to kill me off, like, pretty soon, right? Like, when he first had that gig. Then they go out and they really prove something I've spoken about quite a bit on my channel, is that events aren't story, people. They aren't. We know what happens to him, right?
Right.
Through the Gilligan verse or whatever they call it.
Right.
But we don't, it doesn't, you knew the Titanic was sinking, but until you learned about Jack and Rose, you didn't give a crap, right? Like, I mean, well, you gave a crap, but you can still be immersed. It's not about where it is all about the journey. And, as McKay would say, it's all about the struggle. So it's like, how does somebody get to this point? How does this jackal? Because I think that's where that line comes from that you're talking about. Because he says in the Breaking Bad, he's like, yeah, my third wife or this or my second wife. And they have to address it, but they kind of like appreciate it. But it's a throwaway line when he's like changes his name to Saul Goodman. Like they're like, well, you have to like, I'm not, you're the lawyer, not me, like amend this or whatever. Like, so like they address it, but they also don't want to go too deep into it because it's kind of in conflict with character, but also he's known as a shyster. So who's to say those other two marriages weren't some scam of some sort, right? At some point.
Yeah. And I think all of that goes to the pace of of Better Call Saul, right? So and different people have different tastes. Some will say it's too slow, some will say it's perfect. I think that we're not rushing towards a particular conclusion, right? Because we know the conclusion, right? It's different than say 24, right? 24, we're racing. We want to get there. We want to see what happens with the terrorist, the bomb. We want to be on to the next thing. I think that, periods in that show when they were slow were probably criticized, and maybe rightfully so. I think in Better Call Saul, the pace, you're not rushing to see Saul Goodman. I think the writers, Peter and others, have said that they thought we were going to see Saul Goodman, certainly by season 2. And we haven't even fully seen him yet, right? He's just sort of obviously becoming there now. There's more depth to this character, and I think to your point about the story, it's not necessarily the plot, right? It's not all of that. It's how this character develops. So it's a different kind of show, and I think it's very interesting. I did a lot in the book, try to compare it to Breaking Bad. I think there are a lot of similarities, a lot of differences. You don't, of course, know where Breaking Bad is going in the way that you know where Better Call Saul is, but certainly have surprises in Better Call Saul also. And I know the writers have actually promised that the final season coming up is going to make you think about Breaking Bad in a very different light. So that's interesting, right? I mean, we know the final conclusion, we know all of that. And I think another aspect of it, of course, is that we actually don't know the final conclusion of Gene. So I think the show does have something for everyone. Those folks who are like, well, we want to see sort of a incremental growth or whatever of this character versus we want to just see how this all ends. You can pull different things out of the series.
Oh yeah, you have agency over the story, and why you Better Call Saul. Because when I first was introduced to you, thank you, shout out to the Nettercast, Jason Schenkel. I was like, okay, so this is a lawyer that's going to be talking about lawyer stuff, and I even voiced it. Now you definitely nail that. You nailed it in like a chapter, but then there's also this very immersed like character study about Saul. About Jimmy. and this is what we're talking about. So like Rhea's character, Kim Wexler, this is your open end there because we know Kim's not in Breaking Bad. What happens to her? So like we have these things, but also it is we saw Walter break bad, right? We're seeing Jimmy break bad. Yeah. And now how much of him is a facade during Breaking Bad as well? You know, circumstances have made him in which way he is, for better or worse. Great. But also he's seen what it is to be noble and virtuous, and he's seen that noble and virtuous road, and it doesn't pay. So everything that pays for old Jimmy, Slippin' Jimmy, seems to be a little bit on fringe society and stuff like that. So you can understand him better, and I think it's a far more in-depth character study as far as the human condition. Like Faulkner would say, right?
It is, because, you know, when you see Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, you know, Breaking Bad, my wife introduced me to Breaking Bad, right? So shout out to her. And she told me my favorite character is Saul Goodman. He just makes this show funny. And I started watching it. She said, you'll like this as a lawyer. And I did, of course. I love the show. And his character, I would describe him as soulless, right? It's not that he's necessarily evil. I think he certainly, and Breaking Bad goes to lengths to show you that Saul Goodman, as he's portrayed in Breaking Bad, is no Walter White. He does not have this evilness that Walter White has, but he has this, he's soulless, right? He's very empty. It's the way he speaks, the way he talks. He's just,
the means
he's
to the
an
end,
infomer,
the means to the end to him, those means to get to that, or that end, is far more past our most people's moral compass. But Walter is just like turns into just like a stone cold like sociopath within that series.
The question, of course, becomes, you know, a study of human nature, right? About the book, talking about both characters. I mean, you know, I think one strong argument is that the cancer that Walter White experienced in that situation brought out these, you know, these devils that were, you know, inside him already.
Ego.
Versus, ego. You can argue that, you can sort of argue the same thing for Saul, that he has, for Jimmy, he certainly has some demons. I don't think they were of the same sort of level of evil, but, you know, Jimmy works hard to fight them off at times. I think that's certainly true. And he's so, I mean, this, you know, Better Call Saul is about how this character develops. And, you know, he's developing from someone who we're, you know, empathetic, we're sympathetic towards him, and he becomes someone who's soulless. So how does a character go from someone who we intrinsically have, you know, feelings for, right? We sympathize, we feel for him, and he becomes this soulless person. Walter, you know, the writers get you in this trap also, right? Because you certainly feel terrible for him when he learns of his fate and he's not going to be able to provide for his family. And, you know, it's sort of an old writer's trick, right? Of first impressions, that they're going to introduce this in a certain way. And by the end of the show, you had a segment of the fan base who, you know, they hated Skylar. They were rooting for Walt to dominate the world and kill people and all this stuff. And it's like, if you take a step back, you're like, well, what? Like, what? You're on Walter's side? And that was an interesting argument. People were like supporting him, wanting him to win. And I think it stems back to the way he was introduced. I don't think those fans are evil, right? I think they got in our head that he was doing this for a noble purpose. And
it's empathy. It is empathy. It is the key to every story.
Yeah.
We just went over this, and I hate to always bring up A Song of Ice and Fire, but everybody hates Catelyn. In my last podcast with Gray Area, I was like, listen, we all don't like Catelyn because Jon Snow was treated like crap from her, and how could you be bad to a child as anybody? So but it is this empathy. We hate Skylar because she's always a luxurious, she's always living this seamlessly, because it's not through her perspective, even leading of a luxurious life, and pandering to herself and only being self-righteous, and it's depicted to you through Walter's perspective, essentially, even though it is and so you get this and you see his struggle. The point of story is to understand why people think they need to do what they're doing. That's it. Not to say, yeah, buddy, go and kill that person. Yeah, buddy, go and steal that money. No. It is to understand they think in their situation it makes sense to you. Not that you agree, but you understand that this is what they think they need to do. So what I like about Peter Gould's Saul is that we see this, first off, this wonderful dynamic that he writes between him and his sick brother, a pretentious, overlording, figure in his life, somebody that he could never live up to. And then even once he was above him, I would say, even in a base way of physicality and, in mental ability because of his sickness, or perceived sickness, he's doing everything he can to do right, but he's always still looked down upon, and he struggles just like, and I think we all feel that to a point that we'll never be good enough. And then where's the breaking point? So my point with Kim is we don't know what happens with Kim. So is Kim gone because of something horrific, which is totally possible, or is Kim gone and she's gone because she saw him break, meaning Saul, Jimmy break? Get what I mean? Like, so I think that's intriguing. So the break is still intriguing, right? Because you put stakes on the line. Kim is the stakes in this story.
It's intriguing. And I think, when you watch these characters develop, and I think for the most part, it's a show about, Jimmy developing into Saul, but there's other transformations also. I think one of the critical arguments, in situations you mentioned, Chuck, your perspective on that is a very common one. I think there's two perspectives and they're competing. And I write at length about this in the book. One perspective is exactly what you said. Chuck looks down upon him. That is clearly influencing Jimmy to sort of go in an opposite direction, break away. He's never going to be the, reputable law firm partner that's widely respected like Chuck. So I might as well do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And in fact, Chuck has said that to him. He's like, why don't you just go be someone else? Don't use the family name.
Sorry, should have ended it. Oh my God, that's such a good point. He should have been like, I don't know what. And then they end it. and it breaks to the first episode. And
the other side of that, there's a counter to that, right? There's another possibility. And I don't think we'll ever I think we'll continue to argue this forever, right? There's two sides. You'll never find out which one is right.
We discuss it, people.
We discuss it.
We don't hate people for liking people, all right? Because that's silly.
There's no cancel culture. No.
Yeah.
I think the alternate explanation for that is, Chuck was actually right. He saw Jimmy because he's his brother. He knew who he was inside before we knew him. And he's simply warning Kim. He's warning the audience. He's warning anyone who will listen. He's warning Howard Hamlin, right? He's warning everybody that this guy is no good. So the question is, did Chuck's, actions towards Jimmy cause Jimmy, influence Jimmy to go in this negative direction? Or, was Chuck just sort of, foretelling the future?
Which we know to be a fact, but it is kind of the chicken and the egg, right?
Exactly. It's exactly right. So that's why this show and both these shows, right, are so ripe for analysis. It's why I wrote a book about this show.
Fantastic. And guys, I'm telling you, honestly, if you're watching this, you like dissecting story and doing analysis, I cannot stress enough. And wasn't even a huge fan of 24. I did like what you brought up about the pacing. They better pace it well in 24 when you get that clock in the corner. They literally gave themselves a ticking time clock. But no, your books, they are very like I said, I'm like, oh, he's a lawyer, so I guess I'm gonna have to learn a bunch of lawyer stuff, which obviously I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't, I'm not capable of doing at this moment. But no, this is like 100 good episodes from Lessons of the Screenplay or Nerd Writer, Digital Dystopia, Black Mirror, and I'm using that as my connection. Honestly, that might be degrading it a little bit, I don't know, but that's how I take it. It is really good. It is just the amount that you get from Wisecrack or Nerd Writer, or some of these creators I really, really appreciate in the written word. There's another medium for this. Why You Better Call Saul. Yes, Steve's a lawyer, but he's also a lover of story, and is also not just in touch with these people, but in touch with story, as you very much so should be able to tell. So, and I find it to be amazing. The one thing I do want to touch on here is you have one personal book that we didn't do justice to, and I just want to give you a moment to say what this is about From Poland to Brooklyn.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a book about my grandparents, their account in the Holocaust. So they're Holocaust survivors. Poland, moved to Brooklyn, raised a family here. So I wanted to write their accounts, and they had actually been asked to participate in that Steven Spielberg interview documentary a while back, and they had declined. They didn't feel comfortable. doing that, and they felt comfortable talking to me about it. And I think, when you think about something like the Holocaust and getting the survivors' accounts in written form, I always felt that was important for my family, for educational purposes. So it was very different. I remember presenting it to my agent and saying, "Look, this is a Holocaust book. It's very different than all the pop culture stuff." But that was obviously very personal and different.
But important to take note of, and definitely obviously a story worth taking note of. So you're a literary agent, right? You presented it too.
Yeah, I remember that discussion because she was used to The Simpsons and that kind of stuff.
That is. I don't want to get humorous right after, but yeah, that is quite the transition right there.
Yeah.
But it's worth a note, and we didn't touch on it in the first one, and I'm gonna go ahead and order it because it's the one that I don't have, and I think that's something though that we should have though, because we do escape through all these books. We should also see perspective. We're talking about perspective right now, people's plights, and there's some real world things obviously that aren't that great. But let's sour the mood. Let's just appreciate this man for what he's done. And I wanted to bring that up because I didn't think I did a good job of that last time. And then I love the Tao of Jack Bauer. Like, I wasn't a huge 24 fan, but I really like it because I like how you analyze that procedural. Like, I like your outlook on it. Like, as a writer, somebody that wants to write screenplays, or I do, they're not all that great. Get what I mean? Like, I like how you analyze what that meant for society and culture at the same time. So I'm telling you guys, they're not expensive. They're readily available. Are they digital yet? The World, according to The Simpsons, is the only one that's not digital yet, right?
That's right. The rest of them are. Yeah.
Get that digital. Why is that not digital, man? I'm going to shame you for that one.
I gotta call the publisher. No, I know. It should be. The rest of them are like $2.99, $3.99. The digital dystopia is $14, but the rest are much cheaper.
My Westworld people, read that. I have, and I'm not gonna crap on something else, but the Blackwell philosophy on it. I'm gonna tell you what, this actually is more applicable, and it doesn't talk. It's about, obviously you got electric dreams, electric sheep, blah blah blah, you get it all. Stephen D. It's fantastic. So I wanted to touch on your work, and that you were an accomplished storyteller in your own right. And I do look forward to reading pretty much memoirs, right, from your family's past. So which is something we should take note of. But back to Peter Gould. Now, I see El Camino as not a terrible thing, but also obviously not Better Call Saul, right? There is, the big argument is how much would you milk out of one product, right?
Yeah.
I think Better Call Saul, honestly, it's just such an abstract success. It is so right. But it's conceptualizing that, I'd be like, no.
I think,
right? No, I would argue against it probably, if I didn't know this. But the El Camino, I'd be like, I do want to know what happened. And I don't hate El Camino. I'm not saying but I'm just saying there's, and I think they kind of knew. I think I don't know what they think, but I think they made something that's a little bit fan service, and I kind of like that every once in a while. It's here you go. Here's Jesse kicking some ass and taking names. You know what I mean? Here's a little something for you. But to be honest, I would rather not have it than have it. But it doesn't ruin it. There's way more egregious acts. Yeah. I don't want to crap on it whatsoever because I honestly think it was fun. But I agree.
I think, it's funny. People have very strong reactions to it. I think my reaction is very similar to yours. Sure, it was nice to see the characters again. I don't think it had the same level of depth as these shows. And look, it's a different format. As skilled as these writers are, and they're very, very skilled, to talk about an hour and a half, 2 hour movie versus a series where they're able to build out characters and do different things like that. They had to get a lot in, show, Jesse on the move and, what are the next steps and give some sort of conclusion. That's not what we typically see from, these shows. I agree with you. I think it was, I enjoyed it, but it didn't arise.
A popcorn flick.
Yeah. I don't think it can arise to the level, right? I don't think they did anything wrong. It's just, you're not going to develop Jesse Pinkman over 2 hours. So
he's already developed. This is his second. Yeah. This is his revenge tale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
which is fine.
Like you said, it was fine. See the popcorn movie, see him again. That was kind of cool. A few flashbacks. I don't think I could write a book about it. Put it that way, right? It doesn't have that level of depth. It's.
I'll
not,
try. Yeah, no, yeah, it'll be terrible.
But look, I think the writers have even expressed themselves that they don't want to wear out their welcome. I mean, there's constant discussion, fan requests for other character spin-offs, and I think it would be interesting. I'm certainly not against it to see a Kim spin-off, or I don't know, Hank or something like that.
It's rough. I think Gustav's your only go, but you're dealing against time, people. I do want to get this when they're in the chat, because this is live. People do want to know, because of obviously what we just spoke about, what you thought about, or if you've seen, as far as Hunters. Have you seen Hunters from Prime? Is Al Pacino?
Oh, I saw a couple episodes, but not much. Yeah,
not a big. It didn't catch you.
I didn't. Is it good? Do you like it?
No, I've not seen. They're asking.
Oh, they're asking. I only saw. I think it was 1 or 2 episodes, and yeah. I mean, I guess I won't really say nothing.
It didn't catch you. That's fair. I mean, no.
Yeah,
you're not gonna say it's a piece of crap, but no, I mean,
right.
That's fair enough. Yeah, so that's what he thought about that. I thought that the promos for it were very good. I've not watched it, so that's kind of a paradox in itself, that I thought the promos were really good, and then I didn't watch it.
And by the way, what you said before about junk TV, I do the same thing. I think that it's to find a show like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Simpsons, maybe I put 24 in that category, that ripe for analysis. That it can be tiring to watch that kind of show. I intentionally, and I think probably most people do this. I think it's a good idea to relax your mind to watch something that is, sort of less intensive, that's more relaxing. And I remember the process of writing the Simpsons book was, the Simpsons is so different because it's quotes and characters and all this stuff, hundreds of episodes, and I was stressed out. Like I'd watch a Simpsons episode before going to sleep, and I'm like, I gotta get my pad, I gotta write all this down.
Yeah.
And it was like,
that got you on Good Morning America too. Don't forget that, right? I mean, so it did pay off. So, but it's still a hell of a lot of work, right?
It is. Yeah, it's fun too. I mean, I enjoy it, and each. When you think about these different shows, and you know this, and I think people listening to podcasts know this, you think about shows like Westworld and the complexities and how different they are. How do you compare a 24 to a Better Call Saul, it's just Simpsons? Like, when you think about all of that,
kind of dumb.
Pretty good. It's a pretty good thing for the mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go from thinking about and making comparisons between those different shows? I mean, they're all extraordinary for analyzing, but in very different ways. You take Black Mirror, we're talking about each episode being its own, it's an anthology, so its own world, its own new technology. The characters are not developed in those shows, right? No. These are not shows where
situational.
They're situational, and you can tell what the focus of the writers are, right? I mean, that's a completely different show than something like a Breaking Bad.
Yeah. You do a really good job in your book about, like, I mean, and it's nothing wrong with it, but it is, that's the thing. Like, I get, like, even from my brother, who I love to death, like, and we're going to do a podcast together eventually, if he ever steps up. But, because he's a big, like, he's a Hemingway fella, like, and we all try to be Hemingway until we just drink too much. I always make the joke. But, at the same time, it's like, I don't, like, shame things. It's like people are like, oh, you probably don't like this because it's not philosophical. I'm like, first off, everything's philosophical.
Right.
I mean, by nature. So, like, I don't know what that means.
Well, it's funny too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look, I happen to be watching a lot of The Office, which I'm sure we've all seen many times. I've probably seen each episode 2 or 3 times.
But it stands the test of time, and it
does. Well. And I was watching a lot of it while I was writing the Black Mirror, the Digital Dystopias book, and you'll see throughout the book I talk about The Office a lot. That might be strange, but no. There's so many instances of uses of technology that kind of apply to what I was writing and thinking about. So you're right. I think every show that's focused on the world has something to say. And you wouldn't think that The Office is a show about technology. I learned that as I was writing a book about technology, that The Office, Parks and Recreation,
Oh,
dozens of
Parks and
shows.
Rec, you could do like
You know?
a sociological, like in like a definitely like a ideological, right? Like study on that show, like about if democracy works or like blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
absolutely.
Yeah, like I mean, please,
Yeah.
nobody do that.
The
No,
shows are
maybe I don't know. I kind of like it. I like I like Ron Swanson. That's part of the government because he hates the government and he just loves when he's defunding everybody. But there's always like because that we kind of like touched on this to like wrap it back around. Like you said, like a lot of people wouldn't think like Bob Odenkirk would be like such like as somebody that the one thing I can do well, and it's kind of surprising because I don't share it a lot. I make animated short. The one thing I guess I shouldn't say well. One thing that I always finish is comedy. I'm very good at it. Like I wrote at Second City. I stand up. You know what I mean? Like I can do comedy. Like, but like I want to do drama. But it doesn't ever surprise me when a comedic actor ventures over. Want to know what surprises me? When a dramatic actor ventures to comedy. Because comedy, trust me, we're not happy. Sad. Woe is me.
Bob Odenkirk made similar comments. Actually, I think he shared that like exactly that same perspective. That
I didn't steal that. I didn't steal that, people.
Yeah,
my sadness is my own. I own it. I wish I didn't. Sorry.
No, it's all right. No, but I think look, there's elements of reality, real life in all of these different shows, and you know, to categorize one show as something that's junk, and that may be accurate, but I think you can always pull some stuff out of it. And that can be very informative. I mean, take a show like the Twilight Zone. So I wrote a lot about the Twilight Zone in the Digital Dystopias book. That's a show that is also very situational. I think at a high level, people might think of it as a show where you're just, there's going to be some weird twist ending. It's a show about aliens, some creepiness, whatever. There's so much more to that show. It's about human reactions to different situations that they've never experienced before. So when you look at it from that perspective, the content of the show, whether it's an alien coming, whether it's a new piece of technology, a robot taking over the workplace, the content is almost less important than seeing the reaction of people in a situation that they haven't had before. And I think that's what's informative. We talk about COVID. People make comparisons to the Twilight Zone all the time. I think you see these memes all the time of, Henry Bemis losing his glasses, right? That famous episode. They're like, 2019 was, he got all the books, and 2020 is when the glasses break, right? Yeah. It's a clever meme. But the idea is that, I think that's accurate because we're in a situation now that we haven't experienced before, of course. And, watching the Twilight Zone, something like that, watching Black Mirror even, I mean, it's informative because you're seeing human reaction to something that, is new and challenging. And I think that's informative and helps us to prepare for things, Well, anyway, I think you pull a lot. My point there is you pull a lot out of shows and other that you would think are relevant for other purposes that actually have multifaceted things you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely, and you do such a good job of that the Black Mirror, and I even wrote something that's more for like a medieval anthology and so forth. I won't get into it, but I really like that idea because really what you're dealing with is commentary on culture. Yeah, this is like people's thesis papers, right? Like these writers, like that's kind of how I look at every individual like anthology episode. Like this is somebody's commentary. Now, whether or not that's what, because you have agency over your story, usually there's a broader point. So what does the glasses being cracked mean? Right. It sounds pretentious and all that, but what does it mean? Now we find a connection, and we get that connection later on, right? Like, and we make these social and cultural connections to story.
And look, I think, a lot of it seems hidden. I mean, what I try to do is uncover a lot of it in the books. But like, if you think behind the curtain, and you look behind the curtain, take a show like The Simpsons, right? I mean, on a high level, people who aren't familiar with it, which I guess there's a couple of people in the world who are familiar with it, they'll say, "Oh, it's just some dumb cartoon," right? And that was obviously the criticism early on when it began. I think that's much more muted today, but. Look who's writing this show.
The most educated writers' room.
Yeah, I mean,
them in Futurama, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's half. The writers are from Harvard and all over. They're culturally, experienced. They know everything about the world. There's lawyers on the team. There's comedy writers. Obviously, there's people who have done all sorts of jobs, the best education. So when you put all those people together, do we really think they're just creating a dumb cartoon? And it took a long time, I think, for people, not everybody, but a lot of people to wake up to that fact. And if the medium, of course, of using a cartoon, they can sort of hide behind that, but put all of this different social commentary into it. I think that's kind of fascinating. Also,
isn't there a virtue to that though? Before the time in which I can have a channel, everybody can have a channel, we can all, speak, spew a bunch of poetic nonsense out. There's a virtue to being able to share your ideals and theories and commentary on life in a somewhat submerged or cloaked or veiled way.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, The Simpsons, as look, they get away with way more than other shows get away with, right? They were the only show at the time, maybe still today, that doesn't take network notes. I mean, that was a demand, right? They, as a cartoon, they certainly can. They're not the only cartoon that does this, but they push the envelope in ways that other shows couldn't. I mean, you couldn't have Homer chokes Bart all the time. You cannot imagine a live action, like adult, actual human beings having a show like that. I mean, there's no possible way.
Or the dynamic with him and Marge, like this woman that like has such a lacking husband in so many ways, but at the same time he's faithful and he's honorable in the sense of devotion. But there's flaws. We're flawed people, and flawed people are not attractive to us if they're presented to us as people. But if they're yellow, like jaundiced, alcohol, which fits for Homer with his alcoholism and Barney. But you know what I mean? Like if they're presented in this abstract way, I always talk about that of cloaking. I was one of these idiots. I shouldn't say that as much, but I mean, like I really was like up until like 2009 when I was like DJing. Like I honestly wouldn't read fiction. I thought myself so like I'm like, oh no, it's not where the message and the meaning within fiction is so much more powerful, and that's what I really like about these series, and that's why I dedicate so much time. It's therapeutic to me. What I always talk about on this channel is content is a sponge for the properties in which we love, the stories in which we love. We squeeze the most amount of joy out of them, because if you watch something on Sunday night, there's really not water, especially now. There's no water cooler. Jesus Christ, could you imagine?
Right.
God, we'll all die. But not to be hyperbolic, but you know what I mean. Like it's regardless if it is what it is, and it's not happening. So it's like no, it's like can we enjoy it? Can we discuss it? Can we take more from it? And now maybe we overanalyze things. And there was a time of purity in which the Simpsons could slide by, but they knew they were expressing whether they knew it or not. They knew. I mean, I guess not whether they knew it or not, but they were.
Yeah, and look, politically also, I think that pop culture can be used as a break from, I think all of the toxic sort of culture things that are going on. Now, the shows themselves do sometimes get somewhat political. And I think, one of the main themes with The Simpsons, of course, is, there's certainly a liberal bent to it. And I think recently, especially, they've taken on Trump in a lot of different ways. But overall, I think you'd argue that they're balanced in the sense of they do attack everyone, right? And I think that is why, you talk about a water cooler show. If it's viewed at really a granular level, I think people that pay attention to what they're seeing, they're going to see different perspectives. I think promoted and viewed and analyzed and made fun of. You take the gun control episode, that's sort of the classic one I always use. It's called The Cartridge Family.
Yes.
Season 9.
Really good, yes.
Obviously most of the Simpsons writers are pro gun control. That show, I would think, would not alienate many people on either side, because it goes back and forth between, Homer's just shooting things with his gun in his house. He's just shooting the TV, whatever he's using.
But Homer is a fool, so
Homer's a fool. He should not have a gun. That's that could be one message of the show. Like, this person should not have a gun.
But also they could see the foible, because I love your take on that, because it's accepting, because it's cloaked, so they don't see themselves until the very end of the issue.
Right. And look, then of course they make fun of the NRA. They do all sorts of things, but at the same time, at the end of the show, Marge uses the gun to stop a burglary. Right.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that? Right. And what you should make of that, I
Good,
think,
I guess good people with guns. Oh, that's bad. But yeah,
what I
but no,
argue is, okay, look, I don't think The Simpsons is teaching us, the lesson is not, okay, one of these perspectives is right or wrong. It's that, look, there's some valid points to be made on both sides, right?
yes.
The Simpsons is a springboard for analyzing these types of issues. And the ones that are not the clearest cut, yeah, there's going to be continued debate on those, but to the extent these shows can open up our minds to different perspectives, whether it's having characters like Saul Goodman, you see someone on the street and you don't know how they've become so soulless, you don't know, whatever. People have different paths in life, people
Yeah.
have different perspectives on issues, and I think that's what a lot of these shows can demonstrate. And I think that's why analyzing them, you really can take a lot get a lot out of it.
I think seeing a road is just advantageous in general, right?
Yeah.
Seeing, because that end of the road is the end of the road. You didn't see the journey, so to see the journey, well, it's a lot of self-introspection, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad, but at least showcasing it in a way that doesn't alienate.
Right.
One of my big arguments against Watchmen, even though I liked it as a series, was marketing for it. They said we're going to solve racism, and then I'm like, whoa, like, because and I like the series, but it's like, man, you know how many people that probably maybe needed to watch this show, not maybe did need to watch it, aren't going to watch it because they're going to close their mind, like. And I might sound like some Machiavellian in some abstract way of interpreting that term, way about doing things, meaning cloaking things and tricking. No, but I honestly do think that the messages need to be subliminal to a point, but also just fair, like open discourse. If you tell somebody, hey, yo, I'm against your beliefs, guess what the chances of those eyes being opened are? Very,
That's
very
right.
slim.
That's right. And that's why the cancel culture, I mean, I think is so, kind of scary and destructive. Um, I mean, who knows what would have been canceled if that perspective is not only was enforced before, but based on who's in power. The Simpsons would have been canceled if the wrong side was in power,
Yeah.
right? Now, other things would be canceled, and I think that having dialogue, open debate, and I think these shows, can open all of that up. And I think it's critical, and I think I think you do a good service with your podcast, because you're helping to open people's eyes to the fact that pop culture can teach us a lot about ourselves, about our lives, the writing process, what people go through. I mean, I think it's all very valuable, and I think it's a great thing.
And it's fun. So it's valuable and it's fun. And it's valuable because it is fun, and it's fun because it is valuable. Maybe more so the first. But it does seem to seep through. And I find a lot of virtue in your own writings, and I see a lot of virtue in Breaking Bad, but especially Better Call Saul, because again, we'll just wrap it up here, the conceptualization of that, I'd say no. And I'm so happy that they didn't ask me, right? Because that didn't seem like a worthy venture. It's in there. Well, okay, so what? I mean, because that's at best a foil, maybe. I don't know. Like Saul Goodman at base level is at best a foil. I don't know. He's just there. He's kind of there for not even a foil, to be honest.
I mean, before the show was actually originally conceived, I don't know if you know this, as it was supposed to be a 30-minute comedy show, like a weekly sort of.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And I guess you can sort of imagine that, but you wouldn't get, of course, the depth of the character, the story, or anything like that. He's sort of presented as this sideshow. I said before, I think he's sort of soulless, and the fact that he not only is he not soulless, he's incredibly deep, right? He has so many different layers to him.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you went from somebody who was presented in that way, that emptiness, the coldness,
devoid of affection, anything.
Yeah, and it was even the tone of his voice. If you go back and watch Breaking Bad, he just spoke in a way that, like I said, my wife liked him. He was likable in the sense of he did add some comedic humor to it, and it was skillful. I think that's just Bob Odenkirk being Bob Odenkirk. He put something into the character that was interesting. He he was likable in a sense, but he was soulless, and that's hard to explain. That was my perspective on him. Now he's incredibly likable. I mean, as Saul Goodman, as Jimmy McGill. I mean, he is, you empathize with him, and you watch him. It's obviously a tragedy of what's going to happen to him. You want him to succeed. He won't. But I don't think there's a single viewer who wants something terrible to happen to Gene. I think you want him to pursue whatever he wants to pursue, even if it means harming people in the future. I think you are rooting for Gene. I think you want him to have a fighting chance and see what happens with him.
My theory is that eventually Kim, this is romanticized in some bullshit, but the color in the flashback will come back. It's black and white, and that's when Kim comes back. Now, she's likely dead. It's likely something that he caused. That's the realist in me. And I think it's the tragedy of that. The one thing I did want to bring up there is that Shakespearean arc to this. Shakespeare, in lowbrow, highbrow, this is a good example of that and what we've been talking about this whole time. And thank you so much for spending this time. We'll wrap it up, I promise you. But, it is important to appeal to that. It's fun for us to have fun, people. It's derivative or, a little bit redundant for me to say that. Whatever, I'll get better verbiage. But it is fun to have fun. It's fun to have a show that you like. But also, there is a lot of value in shows like this. And Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. And I really look forward to what Peter will do next, because he's spoken to this in his interviews, that he's going to go outside of the, Gillenverse, whatever they're calling it. Because I think he's a very versed and skilled storyteller. And I think that he's going to create something very fantastic. It give us what we want in a way we didn't expect it. That's the key to everything right there. But I honestly think, like, when I look at my Better Call Saul, I don't know if it would be good without Breaking Bad. Obviously, it's constructed after the fact and all this. So honestly, you can't even make that comparison. But it is what it is. Everything happens now, and that is a great story. And they pulled out a masterpiece. And when you build a cathedral next to the epitome of beauty, right? This stands up. I mean, the feet. This is amazing that this is able to happen. So Vince Gilligan, Peter Gould, bravo to them. Bravo to this, this venture into storytelling, and them to be brave enough to say, let me give you some fun with El Camino. It's a fun
and extremely humble. Vince Gilligan is one of the most humble people I've ever met in my entire life. Incredibly gracious, and you would not believe that what he's created after speaking to him. He does not,
he's very low toned and southern and
unbelievable. Great person. Peter Gould, also a very, very kind to talk to. I've met him a few times. The first time I told Peter Gould that I was writing a book about Better Call Saul, and this struck me, and I wrote about this moment, this conversation in the book. He said, his first question was, what aspects are you writing about? And that question actually prompted me and probably had some influence over how I wrote the book. And I think it tells you a lot about Peter Gould. The reason I bring that up during this, this hour, is because I think it shows you that he views the show, just in that simple question, as having different layers, right? It's not just, as you said, about legal issues or anything like that. That's what I thought I would write about, and I changed. Peter Gould, and Vince, they've said many times that their view of the show and of the characters develops over time, organically, in consultation with other writers, with the actors, and just the feel of the show. So they view the show themselves as something that is growing and incrementally changing. And I think that tells you a lot about how Peter Gould looks at writing and storytelling, that, you can have a plan, and you can have a goal in mind, assuming they have some end goal for Saul, something we're not seeing, but how you get there, and as you said before, the story, I think that is where the their talent lies, of course, and putting that together. They're incredible, and I think we're all fortunate to witness their talent on screen.
Absolutely. And they've changed television, and him telling you, somebody that is writing a book about his show, what are you doing? It sounds like he's more just actually curious. And in the few interviews I've heard with him, he speaks to some of the writers didn't watch Breaking Bad, which speaks volumes. And he talks about one of the greatest feats is tying up those ends at the end, meaning like, yeah, we convinced everybody it was this big old plan, right? Like, but and we made it good, but like we didn't have this, like that Gunn and Walter's truck and all this, like, you know, that's Breaking Bad, but
Right.
you know, they speak to this. So, but him asking you, like, first off, I mean, that's a sign of respect, nothing to take away from that, but also like, hey, like that's a great storytelling, right? Because like I talk about this all the time, people. Don't let Dan and Dave from Game of Thrones, everybody's so down. They don't, the grip has agency over the story. The character is, don't let other people tell you how to feel about character motivation and stuff like this. You have agency over a story. Oh, what, the director thought that Amelia Clark was always crazy, so she's crazy now? That's what you need to think? Right. No. Vince Gilligan, when he was writing his book, or I'm sorry, Peter Gould said, "Oh, so what do you think?" Like, not like, so what? Are you gonna get it wrong, buddy? Like, no, like, so what do you take from this? Like, because this is a creation. This is for all of us. This story.
They view it as an art. I mean, I think it's very clear that
they can't do it any other way, right? A good person couldn't do it any other way. They couldn't be like, well, this is exactly how it is. Else they wouldn't be creative.
Yeah, it's a very artistic show. They view it as, you know, having all this symbolism and different meanings. And I think when they take it that seriously, you know, as fans, you know, we take it seriously, and you know, you can really pull a lot out of it, and it's all due to the way they structure the show. So and I think they acknowledge that, and they relish it. I think they appreciate it.
They have a general idea of where they're going with it, and they're going to go that way, and they have their own idea, but they're not going to crap on somebody else's, and they enjoy that. There's an interpretation. They're just as unsure as we are.
Yeah, I think that's up there.
I can't imagine a human being being any other way. I don't know these people like you do, but I'm just saying, I know human beings are very unsure. I know I am. So
I'll tell you. I mean, I went to the screening of the Better Call Saul premiere season 3, and one of the writers, right after we walked out of the theater, he said to me, he said, "What did you think of that part? Was it easy enough to understand? Did you understand what was going on?" He was actually, he was actually nervous that something hadn't come across the way they wanted it to come across. And I reassured him it was great and all that, which it was. But yeah, I think, you know, the writers also have, you know, uncertainty, and it comes off so great. They win awards and all that. But I think they're also always, you know, nervous and always looking to, you know, keep that level of greatness. So,
as you well know, as soon as you're content, then you're dead. So, I mean, like, if they're like, well, this is exactly how this is going to go, or blah, blah, blah. Like, that's why they position the pencils in a certain way. You control what you can control. And there's very few things in that room you can control. They take the pencils, and I guess we'll point these the right way and everything from there. I hope that goes good. I think that's actually, now I'm coming full. See how that went, guys? Full circle right there from me. I think that's actually a good methodology. If I'm ever in charge of anybody, that will be how it is. But like, why is this guy such a dick about pencils? We don't even have them anymore. I'm like, I gotcha. Yeah, here's some pencils, you dicks. No, I can't thank you enough, and I can't, you know, just really, just say, go ahead and get the books. Get that damn Simpsons book on digital, man. Though, get that on digital, because that's, I mean, people want it. It's a big seller. I'm assuming, like. Get it, like, I don't know how to get to a bookstore, they're not around here, like, you know what I mean, like, but you can order it though. You can order it now. Amazon. We have the links. So yeah, especially you Westworld people, which I know a lot of people that watch this will be Westworld. That Black Mirror book is fantastic, and the Better Call Saul book is fantastic, and it reinvigorated me. This is the end of the series. I did a montage earlier, but I didn't realize my OBS on this new computer was on screen. Not gonna say the brand. But yeah, and I was gonna do the beginning for every single one, but no, I'm so happy to have you here, Steve, for the last one. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that came on this season. These will be converted into podcasts because they're extremely long. We did Nolan's first filmography, or his whole filmography for the first episode. So we've refined it a little. But yeah, no, it's fascinating to talk to people that not only have an insider's view on some of these writers' rooms like you do, but also an author in your own right, and something that your properties are fascinating, are very enlightening. Yeah, if you're sick of the same old YouTube videos, go ahead and get yourself one of those digital and do it on up. So thank you, Steve. And if you have anything that you got coming up, let us know. Are you working on anything currently?
I'm not writing anything right now. Just looking for the next show. But yeah, I've been busy. I've been talking a lot about the digital dystopias, and you know, on some podcasts and a couple of other Simpsons podcasts. So, you know, shows like this I've been doing here and there. But yeah, no, just It's interesting when I wrote Digital Dystopias was before COVID, and I kind of wrote about some of the negative aspects of technology. And, it's interesting to think about it now. What parts of that actually hold true, right? I think obviously we rely on technology so much. And I think it's good and neat and so necessary in many different ways to connect people. At the same time, I actually wonder if the message from the book and from Black Mirror, if it actually has become, that the world is actually more dangerous, right? What I was kind of predicting and Black Mirror is predicting is that, we become so obsessed and, tied to Google and data and Facebook and all these different things that, ultimately that can cause us harm. I think in the short term, it's very necessary. It's a good thing, of course. The long term, I wonder if one of the after effects of COVID is that we've become more entrenched in all that, and we see more problems in the future.
Well, and it's very interesting because I love your take on it, but it is true that now, because a lot of things that you speak about, that is the disconnect. You even talk about some of like the red line, like assessment, I think, of the businesses and so forth. Like, pretty much a detach, which is, in all fairness, guys, very, very true. But now in this time of COVID, with the show to connect it, that we're talking about, they had to do the writer's room through the same thing that me and Steve are doing right now. So I mean, and you're not villainizing technology whatsoever in this. You bring up real world situations, just to be clear. But at the same time, I really appreciate that you bring that up, because now it's a little bit of our lifeblood for how long, That's right? For how long though? Because, and still is devoid of that negative effect. I can't really speak to that. I would say it's much more necessary, and it's not its option anymore. Just because something doesn't become, okay, listen, a meth addict doesn't have an option after a while, I guess. You know what I mean? So they're like, oh, well, you know, but it's still bad for them, right? Like, so it's at the same time, we become more dependent on it. So it's just, hey, volume 2, that's what you're working on. Come on, man. So no, it's a very good commentary. It's definitely more, that's what's great about it, because I don't look at that like that book of being like just not, now everything's, no, now it's actually more, now I want to go back and reread it, because it's actually interesting to look at it now and being, so what now? Because we're forced. It's not a choice. Like, it's like, no, man, you want to work, you go through this and this.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the most dangerous parts, right? Because I don't think that's on anybody's front of mind, including my own. I mean, I agree. I mean, using this type of technology is so essential. I work from home, and so many people are doing that. And it's, as you said, I'm not saying that technology is the villain, but I think the danger that I was kind of writing about is becoming too dependent on technology in different ways and having it expand in ways that we're not comfortable with. That's happening now because it has to happen. And you wonder, you hope and pray that, COVID disappears and gets better and all that.
Absolutely.
But is one of the long-term effects that we've now been so entrenched with technology more than before. And could this be more dangerous than COVID long-term? Nobody's talking about that, but I think that is how I think of those issues now. And it's interesting that the book came out in January, and now you can sort of reassess things. And has the big picture changed? I think in the short term, we're both saying the same thing, that,
less of a choice for sure.
Yeah, less of a choice. It's a good thing and all that. But the long-term message, we might be worse off long-term. So I don't want to be end on a down note like that, but
But at the same time, it's true, and it's technology is a crutch until you start to hobble, and people know that's one of my favorite words. And so now we have no choice but to hobble. So how can we enhance? I see education. I won't get into some diatribe, but I see education. I would reform right now if I had some sort of power. I wouldn't say how can we get people back to traditional education systems. I think teachers are flawed. I think that their education system's flawed. It's my own political views. I think that right now is the time to restructure and reform education and not look at this. Find opportunity in this and do it better. Watch Crash Course. Watch that. I mean, there's better ways to educate people for cheaper. As I can't say cheaper, but anyways,
the problem is that people are forced into effectively isolation. I mean, even the people who are going out more than others, I mean, we're all isolated much more than we were before. And technology is an isolating force. I mean, I think about my own kids, like, they're at this point, they're young, but they're growing up.
Are they in school?
Away from people, they're going to go back to school. It's been the debate, obviously, that's going on.
Oh, but they're at school age, so it's a debate.
School age. it's one of those things that, nobody can predict the future. Nobody can predict anything. But when you, especially talking about issues like technology and what I was trying to write about, if you try to look down the future, if I had to think about what is coming up for this generation, if I was going to speculate, I just think that the next generation is just going to be the isolationist generation. And it's sad in a lot of ways. I think there's probably a couple of positive things about that. We're all connected, and okay, you can talk to 3 people at once on Facebook. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But I just think the reality of it is that, we're just all going to be connected or disconnected, and it's going to change the way that we all live. And as you said, it's necessary now. We sort of don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But
the folly is so within it, though.
Try to think the long term, like, what is the impact of all of this? If kids are communicating with, family members and friends on, FaceTime constantly, what does that do to a child? What does that mean in the future? None of us had that growing up. Is that significant or not? And I don't think anybody knows.
That's what I was gonna say on that is, that's the very fascinating part of it. We have these conventional constructs in which we adhere to, and we think, oh, they're not getting that, because everything you learn about life is in essentially your first 7 years about sharing, about legal, meaning regulatory, like what should you do, authority figures and so forth. Right. Like this is all what pre-education is all about, like preschool and kindergarten. It's like, listen, you need to not steal from kids. You need to follow when I say read. This balloon's red or blue. I really don't give a shit about if it's red or blue, but listen to this, respect authority, and do this. So we have this convention within us throughout the constructs we were raised within. So now I think that honestly it's going to take an overhaul, man, because I don't think there's ever going to be we need to change the norm, but we need to change. I think there's opportunity here as well. That's all I'm going to say. I think that Hank Green and his brother, the one that wrote the books, but whatever, I think they've done a fantastic job with Crash Course and all that. I think that PBS has done a fantastic job with digital education. And I think there are better ways to learn. Watch a first-year teacher YouTube channel, which shouldn't even exist. They have their incompetence on display. I'm a first-year teacher. This school system didn't ask me back. I'm like, yeah, because you showed how terrible you were on throughout the whole public forum here. You're she's like, I love storytelling, so I'm making this story chart, and she can't even get the hero's journey right. It's like, Jesus, no, you shouldn't be a teacher. I would fire you if you were even making a YouTube video. A lot of these teachers, honestly, I have a lot of questions about it. So I think there's a better way to do things, but there's also that human connect thing. So I've always kind of worked at home for the last 4 years because I was working in clubs before that. So maybe I'm not the best example, but yeah, I see a lot of bad things on YouTube of these teachers, and I'm like, man, maybe this could be done better. So there's good, there's positive, but at the end of the day, I'm not the one making the decision, so who cares? And probably for the best. But yeah, no, Steve, thank you so much. We're going to cap this season off, people. Thank you so much. Thank you to my Patreons. I just want to say a shout out to them. Raised by Wolf, your guys' trailer is coming out. Your guys' analysis that I promise is coming out tomorrow. And then on Sunday, I'll be producing with Gray Area for the Dragon stream. We'll be talking about the Dragon Lords. So Bruce C. Moore, thank you. Brett Factual, thank you. Uncle Nancy T, thank you. Maura Lee, thank you. Steel 510 Rain, thank you. Nana L, thank you. Cardinal Doomsday, Amberlyn, as always, thank you. And Tiziana Vitali, thank you. And these books are linked in the information below. I'm going to get from Poland to Brooklyn because Steve has been so great to me. And I think that this is the one standout book that is a little bit different from his pop culture stuff. So I just out of respect want to read it because I think that that's very cool for me as somebody that likes to kind of do an analysis on literature to see how you write something different. It's obviously very personal to you. So yeah, I'm going to take a dive into that one. And I can't speak enough about how great these other books are. They're so good. They really are. They're going to put me out of business with them. So, thank you. And check them out, people. Thank everybody in the chat, Episode Club, Mackenzie Byrne, and Alicia Kingston, and everybody else. AU Pack Mule, Gold scavenging son of a bitch, and everybody else out there. He usually actually did. That's where his name comes from. He's like a silver and gold type of guy. Go mine for gold. So crazy people up in here. So thank you guys so much. Make sure to subscribe. Check out the Patreon. Steven's website is in the information below. It's in the chat. We will see you guys soon, and we'll play you out.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.